7 shocking reasons why you should never remarry after 60. According to senior life experts, remarrying after the age of 60 can sometimes lead to more regret than happiness if it is not carefully prepared for. And this is a reality many people discover only after they have already walked down the aisle. Today we are going to talk about the 7 hidden risks of remarrying later in life. Risks that can quietly turn love into disappointment if they are ignored. The most surprising truth lies in the final reason, and it may change the way you think about marriage altogether. Before we begin, leave a comment below and let us know where you are watching from. And be sure to stay with us until the very end to find out whether you are truly ready to remarry, or if you may already be falling into one of these costly mistakes. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Financial strain. The fear of losing financial security is one of the most powerful worries that arises after the age of 60. After decades of saving, working, and planning, many people believe they have finally earned the right to rest without the stress of constant financial concerns. Yet remarriage at this stage of life can quietly dismantle that hard-earned stability. The truth is that marriage is not just a personal or emotional decision. It is also a legal and financial contract, and the implications are far greater than most realize. From a scientific and psychological perspective, financial stability in later life is closely tied to mental and physical well-being. Research from the American Psychological Association has shown that older adults who experience financial insecurity are significantly more likely to report anxiety, depression, and poor health outcomes. Stress over money is not just uncomfortable, it has been linked to increased blood pressure, sleep disruption, and even higher rates of cardiovascular problems. The body responds to financial insecurity as if it were under constant threat, triggering the release of stress hormones like cortisol, which can accelerate aging and weaken the immune system. There are also specific legal realities that make remarriage risky. In the United States, Social Security rules state that if a widow or widower remarries before age 60, they lose access to survivor benefits from their late spouse. Even after 60, remarriage can complicate eligibility for certain benefits or pensions, depending on how the accounts were set up. Additionally, state laws often grant automatic inheritance rights to a new spouse, even if a will has already named children or grandchildren as beneficiaries. This means that assets carefully planned to stay in the family could unintentionally pass to someone else or become the subject of expensive legal disputes. Consider the story of Margaret, a 62-year-old retired teacher in Ohio. After losing her husband, she felt lonely and vulnerable, and remarried a man she met through a local church group. Margaret had her pension, her Social Security benefits, and a home that she planned to pass down to her children. What she did not realize was that her new husband carried debt from previous medical expenses and had an adult son who expected financial help. Within 3 years, Margaret found herself using her retirement savings to pay off debts she had not created, and she was forced to sell her home. Her children were heartbroken, not only because of the financial loss, but because they watched their mother's sense of security and independence erode. The psychological toll of financial loss at this stage of life is often underestimated. Studies from the National Council on Aging have found that financial insecurity in later years is strongly associated with social isolation, as older adults may feel embarrassed to share their struggles with friends or family. Shame and secrecy can deepen loneliness and even contribute to a decline in cognitive function. Money is not simply about paying bills. It is about dignity, confidence, and the ability to make choices without fear. It is also important to recognize the emotional dimension of remarriage after 60. Loneliness can create a strong pull toward partnership, and the longing for companionship is deeply human. Yet psychological research shows that decisions made under the pressure of loneliness are often less rational and more impulsive. People tend to overlook potential risks when the need for emotional comfort is high. This is why financial education and honest reflection are essential tools for protecting health and happiness. The positive message is that protection and prevention are possible. Clear conversations with children and trusted advisors about financial plans can create security. Consulting with an elder law attorney before entering a new marriage can prevent unintended consequences by setting up prenuptial agreements or trusts that safeguard assets. Regular discussions with a financial planner can help anticipate changes in Social Security or pension eligibility. One practical action is to pause before making any long-term commitment and ask three simple but powerful questions. Am I fully aware of how this marriage will affect my finances? Do I have legal protections in place to preserve my legacy for the next generation? And most importantly, will this decision bring me more peace or more anxiety in the years ahead? Protecting financial stability after 60 is not about being selfish or fearful. It is about honoring the life that has already been built and ensuring that the years ahead are lived with freedom, dignity, and joy. Love and companionship can still be found in meaningful friendships, supportive family bonds, and community connections without the risks that come from legally binding financial entanglements. The path forward is not about denying love, but about choosing wisely so that both heart and wallet remain safe. Money at this age is not about greed, it is about safety. It represents the independence to choose where to live, how to spend time, and what kind of care to receive. By guiding financial security, it becomes possible to focus on health, happiness, and the deeper relationships that truly matter. The change in behavior that brings the greatest reward is simple. Protect what has already been earned, pause before taking new risks, and choose peace over uncertainty. Number 2, health responsibilities. What happens when a decision meant to bring companionship instead adds an invisible weight to your shoulders? At 60 and beyond, health is no longer a side note in life. It is the central concern shaping each day. By this age, most people are already navigating their own set of medical needs, regular doctor visits, medications for blood pressure or cholesterol, joint pain from arthritis, or recovery from past surgeries. These challenges require attention, energy, and consistency. When remarriage enters the picture, a new layer of responsibility often appears: the health journey of another person. Scientific evidence shows that caregiving in later life can significantly reduce the caregiver's own well-being. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that older adults who provided high levels of care for a spouse experienced a 63% higher mortality rate over 4 years compared to non-caregivers. The reason is clear. Caring for another person often means neglecting personal needs. Doctor appointments get skipped, sleep is shortened, exercise routines are abandoned, and emotional energy is drained. Stress levels rise, and with them the risk of chronic disease. Consider the case of Daniel, a 68-year-old from Florida. After losing his first wife, he remarried at 64. His new spouse seemed vibrant at first, but within 2 years she began experiencing complications from diabetes and limited mobility. What started as occasional assistance with medication turned into full-time caregiving. Daniel, who had once enjoyed fishing trips and regular exercise, now spent most of his days managing medical appointments, preparing specialized meals, and providing physical support. Over time, his own health deteriorated. His blood pressure rose, he developed back pain from lifting, and his once active social life disappeared. What was meant to be companionship became isolation and exhaustion. From a psychological perspective, caregiving strain is equally concerning. The American Psychological Association notes that older caregivers are at higher risk of depression, anxiety, and even cognitive decline. Emotional burnout is common, especially when individuals feel they cannot express their frustration for fear of appearing unloving. The burden is not only physical but emotional, often leading to a sense of losing oneself in the process of constantly caring for another. This does not mean that helping others is wrong. Acts of care and love can be profoundly meaningful. However, it does mean that at this stage of life, health is a sacred resource. Energy must be preserved for personal wellness, growth, and joy. The ability to travel, engage in hobbies, volunteer, or spend time with grandchildren depends on keeping the body and mind strong. Sacrificing that strength without preparation can shorten the very years meant to be enjoyed. There are positive solutions. Before considering remarriage, it is wise to ask honest questions. Am I prepared for the possibility of becoming a caregiver again? Do I have the resources, both physical and financial, to sustain that role without losing my own health. Open conversations with potential partners about health, history, expectations, and boundaries are essential. In addition, building a support network through family, friends, or community organizations can help share the responsibility if caregiving becomes necessary. Practical steps can protect well-being. Maintaining a consistent exercise routine, even something as simple as daily walking, strengthens resilience. Scheduling personal medical appointments as non-negotiable priorities ensures self-care does not get lost. Seeking counseling or joining caregiver support groups provides emotional relief and coping strategies. The empowering message is this: saying yes to love should never mean saying no to health. After 60, self-care is not selfish, it is survival. Protecting one's physical and emotional energy allows for deeper connections, richer experiences, and longer-lasting vitality. By honoring health as the first priority, it becomes possible to build relationships that uplift rather than deplete. Before entering a new marriage, pause to examine the reality of health responsibilities. Choose with eyes wide open, set firm boundaries, and make a commitment to never neglect personal wellness for the sake of avoiding loneliness. In doing so, the years ahead can be filled not with hidden burdens, but with strength, peace, and the freedom to live fully. Number 3, legal complications. It is almost impossible to imagine that a simple decision made with the heart could undo years of careful planning. Yet remarriage after 60 often carries legal consequences that no one talks about until it is too late. The paradox is striking. A marriage entered for comfort and companionship can, without warning, disrupt financial security, family harmony, and even medical decision-making authority. Consider the story of James, a retired firefighter from Illinois. At 61, he remarried a woman he had known for only a short time, believing he had finally found peace after years of loneliness. James had spent decades building his pension and had a will that named his 2 adult sons as beneficiaries. What he did not realize was that under state law, his new wife gained rights to a large portion of his estate, regardless of what his will said. When James passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack at 65, his sons were shocked to discover that their father's house and a significant share of his pension no longer belonged to them. What James thought was a gift of security to his children became a source of conflict that tore the family apart. This is not an isolated case. Across America, remarriage later in life is increasingly associated with complicated estate disputes. The American Bar Association has documented a rise in legal battles involving blended families, especially when assets like homes, retirement accounts, and life insurance policies are involved. Even with the best intentions, remarriage creates overlapping legal rights that can alter everything from inheritance to who makes medical decisions if a health crisis occurs. The emotional consequences of these conflicts are devastating. Families who were once close can fracture over property and legal rights, leaving behind bitterness instead of unity. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that unresolved family disputes in later life contribute to higher levels of stress, depression, and even physical decline in older adults. In other words, the legal complications of remarriage do not just affect the family after death, they can directly harm health and well-being while still alive. Yet this does not mean love and companionship must be avoided. It means clarity must come first. Elder law experts consistently recommend that older adults seek legal counsel before entering into a new marriage. Prenuptial agreements, updated wills, and clearly stated powers of attorney can ensure that both the new spouse and existing family members are protected. Transparency is not a sign of mistrust. It is a sign of wisdom and care. Imagine instead if James had taken the time to meet with an attorney before remarrying. He could have created a plan that allowed his new wife to feel secure while still protecting his son's inheritance. He could have communicated openly with his family, preventing misunderstandings before they became wounds. Instead of leaving behind anger, he could have left behind peace. At 60 and beyond, love must be balanced with foresight. The laws of marriage are not only about romance, they are about contracts, rights, and responsibilities. By facing these truths directly, it is possible to protect health, family, and legacy. The action is simple but powerful. Before Before saying yes to marriage after 60, sit down with a qualified attorney, review all estate documents, and have open conversations with family members about intentions. Doing this transforms a decision that could lead to conflict into one that brings security and harmony. In the end, true love is not only about sharing life together, it is about leaving behind peace for those we love most. Number 4, loss of personal freedom. Losing personal freedom after 60 can feel as shocking as stepping out of a quiet garden into a crowded prison yard. That comparison may sound extreme, yet for many who remarry later in life, the sudden shift from independence to constant compromise can be just that jarring. After decades of building routines, tastes, and rhythms of life, the presence of a new spouse can feel less like companionship and more like confinement. By 60, freedom has a deeper meaning than it did at 30. It is the freedom to wake up when the body is ready, not when an alarm clock rings. It is the freedom to enjoy coffee in silence, to read the newspaper without interruption, to travel where the heart desires, and to decide what to eat without negotiation. For many, these simple freedoms represent the reward for years of hard work and sacrifice, yet remarriage can quietly strip them away. Take the example of Linda, a 64-year-old from Arizona. After raising 3 children and caring for an ailing husband until his passing, she looked forward to days filled with art classes, morning walks, and spontaneous visits to her grandchildren. When she remarried, she expected companionship and shared joy. Instead, she found herself adjusting to her new husband's rigid routines. The television blaring from morning until night, meals scheduled at precise times, and weekend plans dominated by his children and their needs. Slowly, Linda's painting classes disappeared from her calendar, her quiet mornings vanished, and her sense of independence dissolved. What seemed like love began to feel like the walls of her life closing in. Research supports the emotional cost of such losses. A study by Stanford University on older adults and autonomy found that seniors who felt a lack of control over daily choices reported significantly higher levels of stress, depression, and even cognitive decline. Autonomy is not just a luxury in later years, it is directly tied to mental and physical health. Losing it can accelerate aging itself. The psychological principle here is clear. When individuals feel their independence slipping away, they often experience what experts call identity shrinkage. This is the sense of becoming smaller, less authentic, less in touch with who they really are. For someone who has finally reached an age where authenticity should be celebrated, this shrinking of self can feel like a betrayal of life's promise. Yet freedom after 60 is too precious to sacrifice. It is the foundation for joy, creativity, and peace. Protecting independence is not about rejecting love, but about redefining it. True companionship at this stage of life should enhance freedom, not diminish it. A partner who supports personal growth, respects routines, and encourages individuality adds to the richness of life. A partner who demands constant adjustment and compromise erodes it. There are practical ways to guard against this loss. Before remarrying, have open and honest conversations about daily life. What are your non-negotiables? How do you each envision mornings, meals, holidays, and family time? Clarity before commitment prevents resentment later. Setting boundaries early, such as maintaining personal hobbies, private time, or separate financial accounts, creates the structure needed to preserve independence. The empowering truth is that independence is not selfish. It is the oxygen mask that allows one to breathe fully, live fully, and give more meaningfully to others. After 60, the years ahead are too valuable to surrender to routines that do not nourish the spirit. Before saying yes to remarriage, pause and ask, will this partnership expand my freedom or limit it? Will I feel more myself or less myself in this relationship? The answer to these questions can determine whether love becomes a liberating force or a silent cage. Choosing freedom means choosing health, authenticity, and joy in the years that matter most. Number 5, emotional vulnerability. On a quiet winter evening in Minnesota, Eleanor, a 62-year-old widow, sat in her living room surrounded by silence. For the first time in decades, there were no children's footsteps, no husband's voice, only the hum of the furnace and the ache of loneliness. In that silence, a simple phone call from an old acquaintance felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. He was kind, attentive, and spoke words she longed to hear. You shouldn't have to spend these years alone. Within months, Eleanor rushed into remarriage, believing she had found comfort. But over time, his charm faded into control. His promises dissolved into financial demands, and she realized that loneliness had led her into vulnerability she never imagined. Eleanor's story is not unique. Emotional vulnerability after 60 is a reality that touches countless lives. Loneliness is more than a feeling, it is a biological and psychological force. Studies from the University of California, San Francisco, reveal that more than 40% of adults over 60 report regular feelings of loneliness, and prolonged loneliness has been linked to increased risks of depression, heart disease, and even early mortality. When the longing for companionship becomes overwhelming, it can cloud judgment, leading people to ignore red flags and place trust where it may not be safe. The psychology behind this is well understood. When humans feel isolated, the brain's reward system becomes more sensitive to signs of connection, even when those connections are shallow or unhealthy. Neuroscientists have shown that loneliness triggers the same neural pathways as hunger, making people crave interaction with the same intensity they crave food. This craving can make promises of love and partnership appear more appealing than they truly are, especially when they offer escape from the pain of solitude. The danger is not only in entering a relationship too quickly, but also in the way emotional dependence can develop. Once remarried, the fear of being alone again may cause individuals to tolerate behaviors they would not have accepted before. Financial exploitation, neglect, or even emotional abuse can be overlooked simply because the alternative, returning to an empty house, feels unbearable. Yet the solution is not to avoid love, but to build emotional resilience. Research published in the Journals of Gerontology shows that older adults who cultivate strong networks of friends, family, and community ties are far less likely to enter risky relationships out of loneliness. Social connection in safe, supportive environments reduces vulnerability and strengthens self-confidence. Practical steps can make a profound difference. Joining community groups, taking part in volunteer work, or exploring new hobbies not only fill the days with purpose, but also expand circles of meaningful companionship. Therapy or counseling can provide tools to manage grief and loneliness, allowing decisions about relationships to come from clarity rather than desperation. Even simple routines, such as daily phone calls with a trusted friend or regular family gatherings, act as protective barriers against the pull of isolation. Companionship after 60 can be deeply fulfilling, but it should never be pursued as a cure for loneliness. Love that grows from strength, independence, and self-knowledge is far healthier than love chosen from fear of solitude. Eleanor's story is a reminder that rushing to fill silence with the wrong voice can bring more pain than peace. The action step is to pause before entering a new relationship and ask, am I seeking this marriage because it nourishes my life, or because I am afraid of being alone? Building strength in solitude first ensures that any future companionship will be chosen from wisdom, not weakness. Emotional security is the foundation of lasting joy, and protecting it is the greatest gift one can give to oneself at this stage of life. Number 6, cultural and family tension. It was Christmas morning in Ohio, and what should have been a joyful family gathering turned into a tense standoff. Margaret's adult children expected to keep the long-standing tradition of opening presents at her house, just as they had done for decades. But her new husband's family insisted on celebrating at his daughter's home across town with a completely different set of customs. Voices were raised, tempers flared, and Margaret, 63 years old, sat quietly in the middle of it all, realizing that her remarriage had unintentionally ignited a cultural and family conflict she could not control. Such conflicts are more common than many realize. Remarriage after 60 does not only bring two individuals together, it often merges entire family systems, each with their own histories, traditions, and expectations. American families today are increasingly complex, with stepchildren, blended grandchildren, and multiple households. When a new marriage alters family traditions, roles, or inheritance expectations, tension can rise quickly. What begins as subtle differences, whose house to visit for Thanksgiving, whose grandchildren to prioritize at birthdays, can grow into deep resentments that fracture families. Research on intergenerational relationships shows that conflict between adult children and step-parents is one of the strongest predictors of family estrangement in later life. A study from Purdue University found that when older adults remarry, nearly 30% of them experience long-term tension between their children and their new spouse. These conflicts are not simply about holiday plans or family rituals. They're about belonging, loyalty, and identity. Adult children may feel replaced or fear that their inheritance and family traditions will be redirected. New spouses, in turn, may feel excluded or undervalued. The result is a clash that can leave everyone feeling misunderstood. The emotional toll of these conflicts can be severe. Older adults often find themselves torn between loyalty to their children and commitment to a new spouse. The stress of mediating between families is exhausting and can lead to isolation, as some choose to withdraw rather than risk constant battles. Chronic stress of this kind is known to elevate cortisol levels, weaken the immune system, and accelerate the aging process. What should be years of peace and family connection may instead become years of division. Yet tension does not have to be inevitable. Cultural differences between families can be acknowledged and respected without requiring anyone to abandon what matters most. The key is preparation. Before remarrying, it is essential to talk openly about traditions, expectations, and family roles. Conversations should include not only the couple, but also children and grandchildren, so that misunderstandings are addressed before they escalate. Transparency about inheritance and estate planning is equally critical, as financial uncertainty often fuels hidden resentments. Imagine if Margaret had invited her children and future husband to a conversation before the wedding. By explaining her desire to preserve holiday traditions, while also embracing his family's customs, she could have built understanding instead of division. With careful planning, both families might have celebrated together, creating new shared traditions instead of competing ones. The empowering truth is that remarriage after 60 has the potential to enrich family life, but only if it is built on communication, respect, and fairness. Love is not just about two people at this stage of life. It is about the community of relationships that surrounds them. Protecting harmony means honoring the past while thoughtfully integrating the new. The action step is to confront potential conflicts before they become crises. Hold family discussions, clarify intentions, and seek legal and emotional clarity about roles and inheritance. By addressing cultural and family tension with honesty and foresight, the years ahead can be filled not with rivalry and resentment, but with connection, mutual respect, and peace. Number 7. Loss of self-discovery. According to a national survey by AARP, nearly 60% of adults over 60 say they finally have the freedom to pursue passions, hobbies, and personal growth they had put aside during earlier decades. This period of life is often called a second adulthood, a time to rediscover identity, purpose, and joy. Yet remarriage at this stage can quietly take away that opportunity. Instead of opening doors to self-discovery, it can close them, replacing long-awaited freedom with the demands of compromise and responsibility. For decades, many adults put themselves second, raising children, supporting spouses, and building careers. Reaching 60 often marks the first time when the focus can turn inward, when there is space to travel, paint, write, or volunteer. Psychologists refer to this stage as a self-actualization window, where personal fulfillment can flourish. But remarriage often redirects energy back toward managing another person's routines, needs, and expectations. The result is that the long-delayed dreams of personal growth are delayed once again, sometimes permanently. Consider Robert, a 66-year-old engineer from Michigan who had always wanted to write a book about his experiences growing up during the civil rights era. After his wife passed away, he saw his retirement as the chance to finally tell his story. Yet when he remarried at 65, his new wife expected constant shared activities and disapproved of the hours he spent alone writing. What began as a joyful connection turned into subtle pressure to give up his project. 2 years later, Robert had not written a single chapter, and the dream he had carried for decades remained locked inside him. Science shows that opportunities for self-discovery are not just about personal satisfaction. They are essential for healthy aging. Research from Harvard's study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on human well-being, reveals that engaging in meaningful personal growth activities improves memory, reduces risk of depression, and extends life expectancy. Creativity, learning, and independence stimulate the brain in ways that protect against cognitive decline. In contrast, giving up on these pursuits in order to meet the expectations of a new spouse can reduce resilience and overall quality of life. The psychological cost of suppressing self-discovery is profound. Experts in geriatric psychology emphasize that when older adults feel their authentic selves slipping away, they often experience what is called existential regret. This is not just sadness, but a deep sense that life's final chapters are being written without their true voice. Regret of this kind is linked to higher rates of depression and a reduced sense of life satisfaction. But the story does not have to end this way. Companionship and self-discovery can coexist when boundaries are respected and individuality is cherished. Before remarrying, it is vital to have honest conversations about personal dreams. Do both partners support each other's growth? Is there room for private time, separate hobbies, and independent goals? If the answer is no, then the cost of remarriage may be too high. Imagine a different version of Robert's story. If his new wife had encouraged his writing, perhaps even creating space in the home for his work, the marriage might have enriched his dream rather than silenced it. Love at 60 should be about supporting one another's self-discovery, not replacing it. The empowering truth is that the years after 60 are uniquely precious. They are not just about survival, but about self-expression, fulfillment, and joy. Protecting the freedom to pursue passions is as vital to health as exercise and nutrition. It keeps the spirit alive and the mind sharp. Before committing to remarriage, ask, will this relationship allow me to continue discovering who I am, or will it require me to give up that journey? By choosing relationships that honor individuality, it becomes possible to live the final decades not as a shadow of the past, but as the fullest, most authentic version of oneself. Looking back at these 7 reasons, the message becomes undeniable. Remarriage after 60 may seem at first like a chance to restore companionship, but beneath the surface lie risks that touch every corner of life: financial stability, health, legal security, personal freedom, emotional strength, family harmony, and even the sacred opportunity for self-discovery. Each story we have explored, from James in Illinois, who unintentionally lost his son's inheritance, to Linda in Arizona, who watched her independence fade, to Eleanor in Minnesota, whose loneliness led her into vulnerability, reminds us that decisions in later life carry profound consequences. They are not simply about love in the romantic sense. They are about safeguarding the very foundation of well-being. What these stories reveal is a deeper truth. After 60, health, independence, and peace of mind are not luxuries. They are lifelines. Science confirms this again and again. Financial insecurity can raise blood pressure and shorten life expectancy. Caregiving stress can weaken immunity and increase mortality risk. Family conflict over legal disputes can erode mental health. The loss of autonomy or self-discovery accelerates aging of both mind and body. Every reason we discussed connects back to the same principle. Protecting stability and freedom protects life itself. Yet this message is not about fear. It is about wisdom. It is about honoring the decades already lived by choosing the path that brings the most peace in the years to come. Companionship does not need to be found in marriage to be real. It can be found in friendships that bring laughter, in grandchildren who bring joy, in volunteer work that gives purpose, or even in the quiet satisfaction of finally having time to paint, to write, to garden, or to travel. At 60 and beyond, love can take many forms. And the truest love may be the one shown to yourself when you protect your health, your dignity, and your independence. The lesson for all of us is clear. Before considering remarriage, pause and reflect. Ask whether this choice will add joy or add burden. Ask whether it will protect your peace or place it at risk. And most importantly, remember that you are already whole. You do not need to prove your worth through another marriage. You have already proven it through the life you have lived, the storms you have endured, and the wisdom you now carry. This is your time to focus on wellness, to guard your freedom, to explore your passions, and to leave behind a legacy of clarity and harmony. If there is one action to take away from this conversation, it is this. Choose peace of mind before paperwork, health before habit, freedom before compromise. Protect what you have built so that the years ahead are truly yours to enjoy. And now, dear listener, we would love to hear from you. What part of today's message spoke to you most deeply? Do you see yourself in Eleanor's loneliness, in James's legal struggles, in Linda's loss of independence, or in Robert's abandoned dream? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Your reflections not only give us encouragement, they help others who are walking the same path find strength and guidance. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe right now so you will not miss the next lesson filled with wisdom, inspiration, and practical steps for living well after 60. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, for opening your heart to these stories, and for being part of this community. Thank you for watching. May your day ahead be filled with peace, joy, and the confidence that you already have everything you need to live with dignity and meaning.